It'll take a minute. Oh, wait a minute.
I wanted to share with Colleen that I discovered my mark. And then all of a sudden it was verified when I listened to Charles Gilchrist, who
I wanted to share with Colleen
works with
that I
secret
discovered my
geometry.
mark.
Sorry, that
It's
was.
secret geometry. It's the foundation of the flower of life, of all of the golden mean of everything. It's that eye with and the thing in the middle that I kept coming up. That was most amazing.
The whole process was so amazing, Gilda, to see it unfold, because it truly unfolded, and the unconscious moves fast, and you just
It does.
tracked it moment by moment by moment. And the way the gold came forth and your own feelings, of the truth. Nobody really wants to hear the truth. And then that
flushing it on the toilet.
Really
and what really worked also is technology, because when I took the photograph with the phone, I'm able to make it macro, and I'm able to see things where in real life the sheet is about that big, and you would have to really try hard to find those amazing compositions that wouldn't come out of the headset.
And when you go into it like you did, and
endless. Yes. And then you start flipping them, and then if there's even more.
And to think that much is going on in the unconscious at the same time, the big picture is just a piece of what's going on in the unconscious. We're just beginning to understand how big it is and how intelligent it is and how fast it's moving, I think.
Yeah. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Scientists be shamed for not fully understanding,
and the fact that it's connected to the way that the entire universe is made. That mark is connected to all of it, to the flower, the way the flowers grow, and that's what came out from the unconscious. So the connection's there.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's very humbling.
Yes.
Well, so we need to talk about some tarot here now. Gilda and Colleen are reminiscing about a session we did on the mark of the self last week, and we will be doing, I guess it's 4 more, right, Colleen?
I guess so. April and May, the same way, the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday.
Okay, ideally that'll all work. And so
well, I find that it's connected to the tarot, because the tarot
surely it is.
works with what we cannot see. That's why people go to a reader to find out what's they cannot see themselves, and what's not out there, something that their inside is showing up in the we space. So Colleen's method works, it pairs up with it perfectly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly does.
For all those artists here that are working on creating new tarot decks.
Yeah, well, I'm all for people making their own tarot deck. They will become individuated, certainly, because they do.
It's quite an intense initiation. It's quite an intense self-initiation process. It certainly is.
Well, that it is. I've not done it, but I have probably 50 or 60 collages over the decades, and I would love to go back and look for the tarot in how has it been there all along, and the archetypes, how is it that they've always been there?
You can probably create a tarot, and the other thing is that you can separate them and then collage them when you need to have more of one. Usually sometimes there's one person, but when you need a scene, then you can use it for different, since it's all your art, it will all be cohesive. You can create.
And that's the topic of Colleen's second May sessions, which are going to be on collage. So good evening to our YouTube audience. We've been talking for an hour, so we're a bit ahead of you. But it's nice to see Justin Case here and
Is he going to turn on his video?
Pardon?
It's just in case going to.
I think he's on YouTube.
He's on YouTube, yeah, and so he will be on the chat on the YouTube video, yes, and unless YouTube doesn't show the chat for some reason, which sometimes in its infinite wisdom, YouTube makes its own decisions. So I don't control these things sometimes. Okay, so good evening, Annabelle.
Good evening.
Hello, Annabelle.
Good evening.
Hey, Annabelle.
And
Good evening, Raquel.
right,
Hi.
we've been having some phenomenal synchronicities here among the four of us, Raquel, Annabelle, and Patricia, and me. This morning, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's a different topic. We'll talk about synchronicity at a different session. But this evening, we're going to talk about the King and Queen of Wands. But before that, I want to brag about a new deck that I got for myself. And I think I still have it on my desktop, I hope. Where did it go? Yes, there it is. Okay. All right. So this week I bought a new deck, and it is the Dark Goddess Tarot. Now, the reason that I think this is an important deck for my young men followers, and about 85% of this YouTube channel is young men between 18 and 44. That's who the audience of this YouTube channel is, just so you know. And so for young men between 18 and 44, there's one thing that you want to understand above all other things, and that is women. You want to understand women. And so what I urge you to do is to either go to Amazon and order this deck, or go to Barnes and Noble and purchase this deck. And you will, if you read the book that comes with the deck, you don't have to be a tarot reader. You just get the book and read the book. You are going to know 156 different aspects of women that you are going to run into in your life. And 78 of them
in the tarot.
Pardon? Yes, 78
in the
tarot.
Of them.
Right,
instead of a psychology book.
Skip,
Right.
You sound a little bit like Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society. The purpose of poetry, boys, to woo women. It's like,
right. Well, it is like that. I mean, but if you want to woo women, you have to go get my book written in my pen name, which is David Garrettson, called Seduction for the Soul. That's my book. And that is 50 poems on the topic of seduction. And that's one way to woo women. But this way, with this, you can understand all the complexities, because neither women nor men are as simple as people might suggest, number one. And number two, all men have a feminine aspect to ourselves. So if you understand these 78 cards and their reverse, you're going to understand a lot about yourself as well. And so I want to start this evening just by giving you a few examples. And as my panel knows, I like to get a book. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not showing the deck yet.
They can understand their anima since this is a Jung platform.
Right. So precisely. And
yeah, there we go. Colleen has it.
right. And so let me see, how am I going to share this? I have to share it.
Very nice.
Quite a beautiful presentation, because the book opens up as a box.
Right.
Right.
And the cards.
Okay, so here is the deck called the Dark Goddess Tarot. And I customarily open a new book that I get to a page, and I consider that significant. And so I happened to open this one to the number 4 major arcana, which is normally the Emperor. But in this deck, which is called the Dark Goddess, of course, it's all goddesses, and so there are no male figures per se in here. And so the 4th major arcana is Sovereignty, the Morrigan, Celtic goddess of blood, and never surrender what matters most. Okay, that's her thing. So I'm just going to read a couple of these descriptions so that you get an appreciation of how rich this book is in terms of giving you a sense of these things. And so I'm reading, and this is from a book that was written by Ellen Lorenzi-Prince. She's a personal friend of Jordan, and maybe she might appear tonight, or she might appear at a later date, and we can talk about her decks with her. But
actually, Holly Troy may appear tonight. I reconnected with Ellen this morning, and this week I'm going to speak with her about presenting here to us.
Okay, and I'd like her to present to the wisdom path.
Right?
Yeah. And so that wouldn't necessarily be the Monday night tarot group, but in any case, I just want to give the YouTube audience the opportunity to have a sense of this and how powerful it is. So I'm reading from the Dark Goddess Tarot, and this is the number 4 major arcana, Sovereignty, the Morrigan. The Morrigan is the Celts' great queen, the great queen of the Celts, the supreme goddess of a vigorous and successful tribe. She provides for the needs of her people through her powers of fertility, magic, and warfare. Fond of the battlefield, she wears the shape of a crow or raven as she picks over the fallen and prophesies their doom. She terrifies her enemies with the dread appearance of her naked, tattooed army. She leads her warriors to victory against overwhelming odds. Prophesying after a battle, she speaks of peace, peace to the sky, strength to everyone. The peace of the goddess is achieved by power, vigilance, and the willingness to shed blood, one's own and another's. The Morrigan, who may also be called Morgu or Morgan, appears in triplicate as well as in a singular manifestation. She is the trinity of Thea, hateful, Bad, fury, and Macha, battle, to show her ferocious and terrifying strength. She is maiden, mother, and crone to show that her power spans the full experience of her life, from cradle to grave and back again. She is a great healer and shapeshifter, for all the plants and animals of her land are valued, understood, protected, and claimed as her own. The great queen commands the kings of her tribe to exercise firm and rightful powers in the leadership of the people and the protection and prosperity of their land. Those who do not recognize her do not receive her blessing. The mate of the Morrigan is the Dagda, the good god, the god of the fertile earth, and the father of his people, and a master of magic in his own right. When the goddess mounts him for her pleasure, the earth, fruits, and flowers, when they couple in All Hallows Eve at the sacred ford, portals open between the worlds, taking souls from the living or returning souls from the dead, for her power reaches into all the realms. And in a reading, when the Morrigan appears, the situation requires someone to take charge of it. If you want it done according to your best interest, that someone needs to be you. Take a powerful stance. Do not ignore an opportunity for your power to grow and your influence to solidify. Find good fortune through directed action. Find power in your own person. Know yourself as the ultimate authority of your life. Make the tough decisions that need to be made, both to protect yourself and manifest your passion. Know your truest needs. Know what needs your best defense. Save your ferocity for these. Do not disperse your intentions through petty disputes. Offer the goddess ale or blood, black feather and flame. Dance in rings on the earth to build energy for the land and strength in yourself. Okay, so I think that you can also see a lot of characteristics that would be in an emperor or male god also from that description. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that these are characteristics of, you know, the leader of his people or her people. And so, you know, this might be a great politician or somebody like that who, you know, does the necessary to be the leader, but also leads other kings and queens in their activity. So it's a major arcana for that reason, and because it controls all kings and queens. But anyway, comments about that before I go on. There's more.
I'd say that, you know, she makes Mars' warring tendencies look like he's playing checkers to her 3-level chess. I mean, Morrigan is quite the presence.
Right. And I don't know.
Could we look to Merkel as
yeah. What a great idea. That's
who's Merkel?
Angela Merkel.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, Angela Merkel.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's a great example, Colleen.
The way she took in the refugees, the way she said, this is what we're going to do. We can do it and we must do it. It's in our history. We have to do it. Yeah.
Right. And which they always did, of course. Now, somewhere here I had
Is she based on a historical figure though?
how about
really this
how about
Morgan
Morgana
Le
Le Fay?
Yeah, Morgana Le Fay.
I mean, one of the really intriguing, I loved all of that language, and one was that she has her naked tattooed army. I mean, it's what a concept.
Yeah.
We've heard of Amazons. I don't think we've had that image, but it's so sort of obvious, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. And since I want to highlight this deck, I want to go through the rest of the Court of Wands in this deck first, and then we'll do the other queens and kings. But
I will share a small detail that it's interesting, and it appeals to a time when in England, in that whole area, the Nordic and the Scots and so on, they really battled. And so in the modern days, to take that as a metaphor for bringing light and caring for the earth, the bloodshed part kind of needs to be revisited.
Right. And
the naked tattooed army, I mean, the uniform being the inked body, each one of those warrioresses was their own mark of self incarnate. I mean, their whole bodies, the body painting, the tattoos, that's just, to me, that's an intensely incredible image of a naked tattooed army. You talk about force to be reckoned with. These people are not messing around, you know.
Women don't
this isn't
mess
a
around
scrimmage. Yeah, this is not a
experience.
scrimmage. This would not be a scrimmage.
Right. And
I read the story of Mary, Queen of Scots, and
yeah.
there you will find all of this. It is, it has been written.
Yeah,
And it
she's
was
a good
really
example.
it's a perfect example. You want to follow this Queen, Mary, Queen of Scots.
Yeah, one and
And she wasn't allowed.
Yeah, my state, Maryland, was populated by her son, King James the First. Okay, so he was her son. She didn't get to rule during the time of Elizabeth the First, right?
She was jailed.
Pardon?
She was jailed
Yeah,
for many, many years.
right. But somehow she had a consort get in to see her because
she kept at it.
Yeah, she had a son named James the First, who was Mary Queen of Scots' son, who became the next king of England. Okay,
Yes.
and who the next, I think, after Elizabeth, and I think Elizabeth lived to be about to 1600, but James in 1634, of course, Elizabeth was the daughter of Anne Boleyn, okay, who had been murdered by her father, Henry VIII, right? And
and Mary was beheaded.
And Mary was beheaded because Elizabeth couldn't stand the competition. In those days, it was okay, right? But somehow she had a son who slipped the noose and became the king himself in lieu of his mother. So the significance of him, though, is that the state of Maryland was founded. James I got sick of all the carnage that was going on between the Church of England and the Catholics at that time in the early 17th century. And so in 1635 or something like that, 1634, he called up his friend Lord Baltimore, Lord Calvert, and said, take your Catholics to a colony I have in the New World that needs to be populated, which is called Mary's Land. That's how Maryland was founded because of that. And so the state of Maryland has a lot of places that are named after British royal family. I mean, here in Annapolis, we have Duke of Gloucester Street and King James Street and so on. And
yeah, the Scots were fierce, and a lot of them were killed.
Yeah, and so there were a lot of tough Scots that came here, but then the Catholics came in, and they sort of pushed the Church of England people out. I mean, now we have an Episcopal church here, but and it's a block from the State House, and it has its own circle in the city called Church Circle. And in that church, just for historical completeness here, in that church, they have communion chalices that are on loan from the British Crown. And they actually came out of the crown jewels and were loaned to this first Catholic congregation in Maryland, which is still here. And but the Church of England came in, right? This was the Church of England that was come in coming in competition with the Catholics, and they were given these chalices, and so they're still here. And in that church, they're carried on the books of the church as on loan from the British Crown. But since 1776, nobody's offered to give them back.
Right.
And so the church, the St. Mary's Church, where this is, they couldn't insure them, so they had to install a vault in the sanctuary, and every week they have to take these chalices out of the vault in order to use them in their service.
Well, it's a small world, because Tammy
that.
just indicated in the chat she's a direct descendant of Margaret Calvert, Lord Baltimore's daughter.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we're all connected to somebody somewhere, right? But anyway, I happen to know all this stuff because I give tours to businessmen who want to invest in my businesses. So
it was especially distressing to my family that we came over here to be Catholic. Because
you came as Catholic, so
right, they're very anti. No, we were always what we are. And I'm like, no,
right,
not so much.
But the Catholics sort of got pushed out by the Anglicans then, and so when by the time the Revolution came around, the Scots, who were the tough guys, had been pushed out of Annapolis and up into the western part of Maryland, and they became the first Maryland regiment. Okay, and that's called the Old Line. Maryland's called the Old Line State, and they were the Old Line because they had actually fought in the French and Indian War, and they were old guys who knew how to fight against the British Army. And so on August the 27th, 1776, George Washington's army was trapped on Long Island by the British. And the British, or the Old Line Regiment, the Maryland troops, held up the British Army and gave George Washington the opportunity to escape with his army across the East River into Manhattan. And so they saved George Washington, they saved the revolution that day. And only 9 of them made it through the battle unscathed, and 400 of them died in the battle and were buried under what's now the streets of Brooklyn, New York. And the building that then I had ancestors in that part of the world in Brooklyn who had a house, and the Old Line attacked the British headquarters. The British had taken over that house, which was made of stone, and it was called the Old Stone House. And so the Maryland Regiment attacked that stone house, I think 8 times. And only, as I said, only 8 of them survived, plus their major, I think it's Major Gibbs. I don't remember exactly the name, but anyway, only 9 of them survived. But 100 years ago, or 100 years later, they were honored by a historian who said that that was the most important moment in the history of democracy. Okay, maybe up till this year. Okay, we've got some new examples, but up until that point, if they hadn't held the line, Washington's army would have been terminated on that day, which was about 6 weeks after the Declaration of Independence. And so it's important.
And that's the night they escaped under the cover of darkness and fog in silence, right?
Well, they escaped. They escaped somehow. I don't know the details, but it's called the Battle of Brooklyn or the Battle of Long Island, and that date, August the 27th, 1776, was that important date that they stopped the British Army that had 2,000 regulars there and let George Washington's army escape from Long Island, where they had been for some reason. I don't know why. And so anyway, I don't know why I got diverted on that.
Because they're descendants of Morgan Le Fay, I guess.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So the Scots, so, you know, the Scots that Colleen was talking about, the Scots and the Irish, were the tough sons of guns that had been pushed out of Annapolis by the Anglicans, by the British then coming over and saying we want to be there too, not just the Catholics. And so they had been up in the hills and they were just tough old coots. And they weren't going to take no for an answer.
Right.
And they saved the revolution as a result. And so it's an important thing. Okay. And well, there's a little bit more to this story. So the old stone house belonged to one of my ancestors, and it had been commandeered by the British Army. And later, much later in the 1930s or 40s, it became the clubhouse of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And so the Brooklyn Dodgers were headquartered in the old stone house for about, I don't know, 50 years or something until they moved them to LA. So
well, it's very actually on theme. I mean, it's a very Wandy kind of story with the old line coming in. And that's some good long life energy that's coming, you know, swoop into the rescue.
Right. And those guys were, you know, they're buried in an unmarked common grave under the streets of Brooklyn, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And the old stone house is still there, and there are literary readings there. And I read there about 1.5 years ago.
Oh, you did? Terrific.
Chapter of
Nice.
a novel. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was built in 1699 or something like that.
Yeah. There's a lovely little park around it, and yeah, farmers market and the beautiful house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the connections are so awesome.
Little bit of a historical exhibit there too.
Right.
Yeah.
About that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with
Tammy,
the old line too, there's
Tammy, you were saying something. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm just amazed by the connections. They just keep happening.
Yes.
They keep flowing, right?
Flowing.
as Stephen Wright
Right.
would say, as Stephen
Right.
Wright might say, it's a small world, but I don't want to paint it.
We might say that, you know, all of life is connected with the tarot in one way or another, and in great depth. So anyway, does anybody else want to say anything about the Morrigan before we go to the suit of wands? And then I'm going to talk about that with respect to the Dark Goddess, because I have that new deck, and then we'll talk about the other ones as well. But so anybody else talking about the Morrigan or the Morrigan? No, going. Okay. All right. So let me also share with you then, because we didn't get the opportunity to share these last week because I didn't own the deck last week. So Ellen, last name is Lorenzi-Prince, has changed the titles of the court a little bit. So she makes the princess of the court the Amazon, the knight of the court is the siren, the queen of the court is the witch, and the king of the court is the hag. And so I want to start with the princess. And so in this case, so this would be like the Princess of Wands in in a typical tarot deck, but this is a unique tarot deck. And so it's Pele, Hawaiian goddess of the volcano, a passionate heart should not be made tame. And so here's what she says about it. You can read it too, but I can read it better from the book itself, so I'm going to do that. All right. So Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcano, daughter of Humea, the earth mother, and Wakea, sky father. She is Akua Kino Lau, a spirit of many bodies. Pele appears as a withered crone who may ask for a cigarette and light it with a snap of her fingers. She appears as a hot-blooded young woman who dances on the rims of craters, and the goddess is passionate and can be vengeful when her passion is not requited. She falls in love with handsome young men, seduces them until she is satisfied, and then returns to her mountain. There she appears as her elemental self, as a river of red running lava, or as steam rising from cracked black rock, or as fountains of sparks against the sky. Pele is possessive of every bit of her land, which is both her home and herself. Travelers who pocket stones in Hawaii and take them away are known to have had bad luck until their pieces are returned to her. Her people honor and appease Pele with heartfelt offerings, casting into her fires sugarcane, hibiscus flowers, money, and their own cut hair. Branches of the native berry bush of Ohelo, with its sweet red and yellow berries, are also offered sacred to Pele, as well as a hardy and versatile flowering evergreen, the Ohia Lehua, the first tree to populate a new lava field. In her ancient homeland, Pele causes a great conflagration by playing with underworld fires. When the gods, her relatives, chase her from that place, she comes to the tiny atolls that are Hawaii. Pele creates island after island from them, bringing a new home into being for herself through raw power, through passion and need, through great eruptions of fire and earth, resting within Mount Kilauea on the Big Island. The goddess divines her next adventure. When Pele appears, love whom you love, whether or not your love is returned. Powerful emotion can be released through art and action, in hard work and hard play, through movement, words, and color. Want what you want. Do not hold back in declaring your desire. Not getting it is better for you than not acknowledging it. Do not overthink the situation. Learn to trust the core of the fire inside you, your life force and its impulses toward growth and expression. Be open to adventure. Let passion lead you to a new land and greater power. Okay, so comments on that. So this is Juan's.
I'll share that there's something very true. I've been in Hawaii, and they have and I used to collect stones, and they have an area that has these particular, they're coral, kind of like white coral, and they're just on the beach, and they look like the brain. They call it the brain beach or something. All the shapes are, and so I collected them, and my friend said, you can't take them with you. It's bad luck and blah, blah, blah. I had boxes of all these absolutely gorgeous stones, very unusual. I do have a few, actually, but I was told not to take them, and because it was bad luck, and this is now, you know. And I also noticed that the shape of the head is similar to a pineapple. And, you know, there's a lot of pineapples that grow in Hawaii.
Right. And you may want to send those rocks back, Gilda. And that may be what's stopping your ballet from getting produced.
Well,
Well, the beautiful image there, I mean, magma within the earth is literally living earth. And then lava is then birth of new lands. So there's the Gaia, the universe birthing there. Very, very wonderfully feminine in that whole life-giving passage.
Yeah,
Right, and-
I like the abstraction of it and the power held within the abstract image, which is not quite formed into a human being, but is
Right.
definitely active.
And so one of the reasons that we're doing these long conversations about these cards is so that we can remember what all these cards mean. And so it seems to me it's very easy to remember what the suit of wands means, which is the fire suit, and which is being referred to here. And so the young woman who's going to exercise her passion, let's say, you know, it's both an exciting prospect for young men, but also a deep warning that it could be too hot, and you have to beware. But
it means a lot to her, that there's a lot riding on her fire.
Precisely. And so, you know, she's the youngest, and so she's the princess, and so you know, youth will be served often on silver pallets, and so, you know, this is the fiery young woman that, you know, gets life going, because you know,
it's also like an offer of initiation to
Precisely.
the young men that you're calling, because they're getting the entire burst, and so they are required then to get in touch with that aspect of themselves.
Yeah, and it is an initiation where you know, you get attracted to a passionate young woman, and boy, then you're into life, right? Very soon. You know,
Well, and
then,
speaking of that life, the volcano then is the feminine blood of the earth enacted, the vessel of the feminine blood. I mean, this is very, very fertile, literally.
right.
So it also carries that little danger of actually fertilizing.
Well, and you look at the volcano, it is destroying at the same time as creating.
Exactly.
You know, it's
Right.
it's transformation.
And you look at historically what happened in Hawaii with the Big Island. The smaller islands to the west were all over that location where the Big Island is now. And so they came up as volcanoes, and then gradually they moved to the west as the magma moved west. And as they got older, then they got worn down. So in the Hawaiian Islands, the lowest islands are the ones to the west, but the island of Hawaii itself, the Big Island, is still over that, and it still has 2 active volcanoes on it. So it's very symbolic of the whole thing. So
still in Oahu, where I've been, and I took some fabulous photographs that could probably be included in a tarot. There's it was the birthing. That whole area was for birthing, and so there's trees and like red type of clay earth, and a few little stone places where I would imagine where the woman held on to the stone, or who knows how that went, but it's still there.
I'm seeing an electronic hand raised here, but whose is it?
Mine.
Oh, Raquel.
Raquel's.
Oh, okay. There, I didn't see it before. So, okay, your turn to talk, Raquel.
What I think would strike me the most is that this deck is really powerful for this card. I mean, the meaning, the passion, the strength, you know, it's kind of too much for a page card, I think. I don't remember seeing like an interpretation so strong for that particular card. So I think it's interesting because the more tarot cards that you know, the more you get into the meaning of the element, the fire element, I think. So it's interesting in one hand because you have to know with what are you working with, you know, like with this deck, some things will change, but I think it's interesting to have such a strong meaning for a page, because usually the strength of a page or the initiative that the page card brings is not enough to stay. I mean, it's something that it flies by through your life. Like if you go through this meaning of passion, it's like that passion that you have for someone that lasts like maybe a month. Unfortunately, it can sweep your life away, but still it's gonna last a short amount of time, you know. But I think
Well,
that's interesting.
but
It's
if you're
much more
drawn
creative.
in by the passion, you know,
Yeah.
if a young man is drawn in by the extreme passion, then boom, you're initiated, and you know, your young wife then delivers a baby, and now you're connected with that
Yes,
young
you're no
wife
longer a
for the
child.
rest of your life. Okay, even if you divorce, you know, I still see my ex-in-laws at every wedding and funeral, because my daughters are all related to them too, and so they come to weddings. They came to all my daughters' weddings, and so on, and so you can't think that you're going to just cut it off because you divorce somebody. Once you've had children with somebody, you're in it for life with them now. So it is a big commitment, and so the passion, you know, men have to understand that the passion comes with the commitment.
Yeah.
And
it may be also that females grow up faster than males, and traditionally the page has been a male card in the old kind of decks. So since this is dedicated to the goddess, it brings that the fact that at a younger age they have this power already that can do all, can become a woman and everything all
That's
at
a great
once.
point. And Raquel, I think it's a really excellent point. You brought up the intensity of this quote unquote page. Makes me think that she's more true princess, meaning pre-queen, queen in waiting. So this is not going to grow up as a weakling. This is going to grow up as her intense raw power that is checked and formed and made and strengthened and intensified. And also, since this deck has such, especially this card, such a nature bent, and actually more nature DNA to it, not a bent, that's not intellectual, it's so living. I appreciate you said that, because
and that's what the wands mean. And Colleen, you might want to speak to the emergence of the feminine here, and how you see this as a
well, it's the passion aspect of it is so dangerous for the young feminine, because it can mean that this is the rest of her life, and whatever dreams she might have had for herself are going to be affected by this, even though in the moment, you know, it seems absolutely wonderful and she feels like the glorious princess. And then we're not so advanced in our humanity that it isn't always a possibility that she might die as a result of this. Should she become pregnant? How many women die in childbirth. And
Well, and
that,
especially before the 20th century, but even now, obviously, in many countries, that's still true.
so I think that runs deep in our DNA, even though we've come a long ways. But that, when you speak of the young man needing to have the future in mind, this is what I think the young woman has in her DNA. She's not very conscious of it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one, which is the siren.
We'll quickly skip too. That brings up your story with the osprey, where he has to bring the fish. I mean, so this is not going to be a flippant thing,
right? Yeah, I mean, the male osprey has to build a house for the female, and then he has to feed her, make sure she gets fed while she's bringing up the babies.
Right.
And he's first got to get her attention, and she has to get his attention. So right now on explore.org, if you look at the ospreys on the Chesapeake, the male has come back, and ospreys mate for life. The male has come back from Brazil, and he's starting to build the nest, but the female, who's now 14 years old and might not make it back, hasn't shown up. And so now there's some young females that are hanging around with this old king, wondering if they're going to get a chance in this nest. And
the osprey groupies.
Yeah, so they really tell a story. But okay, so the Prince of Wands, or the Knight of Wands, is represented in this deck by the Siren of Fire, Kadesh, the Egyptian goddess of pleasure. All acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. Okay, so here's what she says. Originally from the Middle East, Kadesh, Ketesh, Kedeshet, or Kudshu, is the goddess of nature, beauty, sexual pleasure, and sacred ecstasy. Her name is from the Semitic QDS, which means holy, and her titles include Mistress of the Gods, Beloved, and Without Equal. Her epithet of Lady of Heaven, as well as her connection to both love and war, shown by her two husbands, links her to other great goddesses from the East, such as Ishtar and Asherah. Kadesh arrives in Egypt in the time of the New Kingdom, bringing one husband with her, the Syrian warrior god Reshep. She acquires her other husband in her new land, the ever-ready Ithyphallic Egyptian fertility god Min. The goddess and her consorts are celebrated and worshipped together as a triad. Kadesh holds lotus flowers in one hand and snakes in the other. These represent not only female and male genitalia, but her gifts of deep healing. She appears nude, facing front, standing on a lion and wearing the crescent moon, all Eastern attributes. In her new land, she is given the jewelry, hairstyle, and sun disk worn by Hathor, the Egyptian goddess of love and joy. Kadesh's Eastern ferocity is softened by Hathor's gentle influence and the embrace of her new people. She still has her warrior god at hand, but like the lion she stands on, his power is in service to his lady. Pleasure, not bloodletting, is his priority. The marriage of the two cultures symbolized by this goddess is inclusive. No husband is excluded from the other. Kadesh is made sweeter by the embrace of her Egyptian god, but her raw passion and powerful sexuality remain. She has the power to bring new love and new life from afar. She makes beautiful the union of separate bodies and diverse souls. When Kadesh appears, balance and beauty are achieved by including all that you love in your life. Let all that you love serve and sustain you. Do not sacrifice one love for another. Be large enough to embrace more. Know what brings your pleasure and experiment if you don't. Take charge of your own pleasure through doing it yourself or communicating honestly with your partner. Sex is healing when there is mutual respect with care for oneself and for the other. However you feel about your body, celebrate that it can be capable of pleasure, whether it is a lover or the breeze that caresses your cheek. When you stretch or move, do so as luxuriously and sensually as you can, as you are able. Explore what another culture has to offer, see its sights, savor its scents and flavors, enrich your world. Boy, are these ever lessons for our current affairs. Okay, comments about this? The substitute for the Knight of Wands here.
I'm just struck with how feminine the language is.
Yes, right.
Me too.
But as a man, I don't find it objectionable at all. I find it touches things in me, certainly.
Well, even the word ithyphallic, which is a statue or carving of a man with an erect penis, the itha, you want to go to ichthy, fish almost first, which is so Piscean and feminine. So even in that word, which is wholly masculine, the word choice there, it just buries it in this wonderfully lush syllable structure.
Right. So Jordan, Holly has joined us.
Oh, excellent.
And she's on the Zoom call. So if you would introduce her and say hello, we'll move on, but let's interrupt for that. So Jordan.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome, Holly. Everybody here. Holly Troy is in Flagstaff, Arizona. She's a tarot reader, astrologer, and also has a band called the Lofi Sophias. And so I invited her, a dear friend, and from Flagstaff. So welcome, Holly. Thanks for showing up.
I guess I'll unmute. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're quite welcome. We always like good experience. Skip is a novice. I've been playing with it for a long while, but there are others here that know lots more than I do, including Gilda Cow, who's done a ballet on the tarot, and lots
I
of
will
other
share
people.
that this card certainly it's like a primitive version. It's very active. It's the active version of the first one actually taking place.
Yeah.
The other one is the possibility that this is going to happen, and it can happen. And by the time you get the Knight, it's already happening. It's on its way to the encounter.
Right.
And so the image of a goddess riding a tiger, it's so ancient and in so many different traditions. So there, she reminds me of Hathor, of the Egyptian, but I didn't.
Yeah, which is what they mentioned here, right?
No, I think they mentioned more the Middle Eastern version, more towards the Syria and so on.
Well, she specifically mentioned Hathor, though.
Oh, she did.
Also, yeah.
Oh, good. So
Right.
because that's what I got.
But
and,
you're quite
very
right.
ancient. Supposedly Hathor is even more ancient than the earliest of the Egyptian pantheon. So meaning that it's this power is ancient.
Right. So Holly, for this evening, at the beginning of this, we've been introducing the Dark Goddess Tarot. The topic for the evening is the Court of Wands. So I'm using the Court of Fire in the Dark Goddess to talk about the Court of Wands. And just think that this particular deck is very, very powerful in the writing about these things, and very informative for young men who are 85% of the following of this YouTube channel. So, right. So, but not only informing young men about young women, but also about the feminine side of themselves. Okay, so I deeply understand things about the feminine side of myself. That doesn't mean I don't think I'm a man. I served 23 years in the U.S. Marines, and so I never had any doubt about my manhood per se. But thanks to my study of the Tarot and other psychological studies, I've understood my feminine side also. Right. So,
which is a projection of the actuality of the actual person that they choose to engage with.
Right out.
It's connected to their own inner being. I often think of it as if they happen to have a female body, what would it be like? And that's what they carry inside, but it's hidden. So that feminine side, which is completes the duality of feminine and masculine, which we all are complete beings, then gets projected out in order for them to see, to experience that part of themselves. And when they actually connect, then they become alive, because inside that's what they carry.
So
definitely too, Holly, I mentioned astrology, tarot, and also music. Anything else you'd like to share with the group that's you? I didn't mean to pigeonhole you, because you're also a writer and a poet. And
I was trying to get Hi.
Hi.
I wasn't able to get my my video working before. Jordan kind of got it there. I kind of do just about everything. Musician, singer, performer, do astrology. I'm interested in like somatics and astrology and creativity, just sort of the effect of astrology, the chakras, the chakra system, and tarot on our creative process, and just using sort of the body to bring in the words at some point.
Right, and we're about
Colleen.
Colleen has that. And I wanted to refer to
I want to introduce you to Colleen Kibert too, because she's doing a wonderful Mark of the Self, Mark of the Soul open studio that several of us have been participating in for some months. And I think, Colleen, I mean, could we take a couple minutes for her to mention that surely. For Holly? Because I think Holly,
I think Colleen
you just be a fish in the ocean. I mean,
Colleen might want to also refer to her observation about the emergence of the feminine here, and how she and I have been discussing the Dark Goddess Tarot as a way to as something that's showing that emergence. So, Colleen, your turn.
Well, I'm excited about what's happening in terms of the voice of the feminine coming forth from the collective unconscious. And because the voice of the masculine has been so loud and full, and everything has been written in the voice of the masculine, that much of the knowledge and wisdom that the feminine has to offer has been in the unconscious. And the women have been meeting each other in the collective unconscious, because that's where there's space for us. But now this is coming forth, and I think this is really exciting. I'd like to be around long enough to see the wave breaking, because it does seem like this is the fourth wave for me of the revolution. And so this deck, as I was saying earlier, I really appreciate the feminine vernacular and the sense that a woman has done this. And in reading just her acknowledgement in the back of the book, it's just a one page, doesn't have a lot of words, just very simply in I statements about her doing this. And I immediately had an intimate feeling with the author, you know, which was very nice just to begin with. And the other thing that's wonderful is that I don't have to be translating in my mind all the time about what this means to me as a woman, or what this means to women.
Do you want to read this page 175 that you just referred to?
Would you please? Because I don't have the book in front of me.
Okay, I do have.
Good.
So I'll read it. And this is Ellen Lorenzi-Prince's My Personal Journey with the Dark Goddess Tarot. This is what she says. That's what you mean, right, Colleen, that page? Okay, it's only 2 paragraphs. I have to say how strange it was when the Dark Goddess Tarot became an artifact I held in my hand instead of a process I was experiencing. I had to learn about using it as an oracle. Even pulling one card could invoke an overwhelming sense of, hey there, remember me? Remember everything you thought as you drew me? Hey, what are we doing today? This was disorienting to me, not just as a tarot reader, but as an introvert. I was used to having a relationship with one goddess at a time, one out of only a few who'd come alive for me beyond the scope of a ritual or meditation. Here were 78 goddesses coming alive. It seemed more a set of icons for magic or devotion than a tarot deck. I mean, yay for magic, but I still wanted the guidance of a good oracle. Other readers, though they hadn't my memories, told me they worked with only one card at a time as well. They felt how the cards vibrated with power. I kept working with it, and as ever, with practice came ease. Once I became more accustomed to accessing an entire world of goddess wisdom with something I could hold it in my hand, the divination flowed. Extended conversations and multiple card spreads became possible. Now I feel that their advice is indispensable, and their presence in my life is unmistakable. And so did you want to make a further comment about that?
Well, you can hear how immediate she is and how intimate she is in her I statements. It's not usually there would be a little history of the tarot, you know, would be much more didactic about the tarot, but she leads us into it through her personal experience. And that to me is the voice of the feminine.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Very visceral, that comes right across as alive.
And authentic.
Right.
And definitely. You know, I'm sort of a mixed emotion personally about whether I would ever use this deck in a reading. It's almost overwhelming in a way for me to think of using it in a reading because there's many associations with it. But I really think her book is very powerful, and from a Jungian psychological point of view, it's something that all Jungians should read just to understand the feminine, if nothing else. I mean, Jung, you know, talked in very, very general terms about the anima and the feminine principle and so on. He never got down in the nitty gritty of, you know, what it's like to be a woman. And I think he didn't think he had purview since he was a man, but you know, this really is like a master's degree for men in what women are like under various circumstances, and so it's a very powerful
But
deck.
it is also a very clear mirror for women themselves, for females, to be able to find parts of themselves that they have never paid attention to.
Right.
For example, in the Toltecs and in different types of spiritual teachers, that all of the methods were all related to men, masculine, the
Yeah.
men. There was
Right.
almost, I had to read, after reading 12 books, 3 other books written by women, and I couldn't do the practices that the women did. I was always doing the practice that the men did, which was using the head.
Right.
And the women had to use their womb in
Yeah.
order to do the traveling and so on. And I just, for the love of God, I couldn't get to the womb. I was stuck right here.
Right.
So it's very important that's a very important deck to, especially in the modern times, when a lot of the times females have a difficult time having all that combination of facets mirrored well for them.
Well, yeah, and also the capital N nature, Gaia. All of these 78 goddesses are then elements, as it were, components of Gaia. And, capital N nature will kill you, but it doesn't have any malice. It's life and death and all. And so I feel like this Dark Goddess Tarot is quite a preamble to, the initiation of people into capital N nature, where, we're stuck in cities where civilization amputates nature, and then civilization actually then begins to cause uncivilized behavior counterintuitively because the nature's missing.
Right. So I'm sorry that we've been ignoring the YouTube chat, which is going along on its own, but I did want to bring to Tammy's attention that there is an accolade for your shirt. The shirt you're wearing, which I can't
Is that
see.
MTV?
What is it? MTV.
Oh my God, MTV.
All right. Okay.
Back when they had music.
So there's
Exactly. I got cold. This is my only long sleeve shirt.
Okay. Well, so now we're going to get into the very deep and wild and woolly. Raquel's got her hand up again. So
Yeah.
Raquel, speak.
Sorry.
Go ahead before I go on.
I was just thinking about how the significance of the card combined love, sex, and creation in a way that is powerful for women. I don't think that this deck is useful only to men, because I think myself, I was created in a very masculine side of things. And even if you look at the archetypes in tarot, if you look at the archetype of goddess Athena, is a very masculine side of the feminine. It's a very and it's very contemporary, because it's all about the executive woman, the overachiever, the woman that wins in a man's world, so she makes herself more masculine. And I am like all about that, actually. So and unfortunately, throughout my life, I was always the woman that was portrayed as having a man's head, kind of like more masculine thought, work of mind, and to me, that phrase that said, like, oh, you don't have to give up on one love to have another. You have to make room inside yourself to get both of them. Like, that to me is like, I have to learn that still. I have not integrated that part of my life yet, because
I want to draw your attention to the fact that we're having a speaker on Friday named John Destian, and he's written a book called Coming Together and Coming Apart. And the first 3 words or 4 words in his book are "Marriage Doesn't Exist." He's a Jungian analyst, and those are the first 3 words in this book. So I urge you to join us at 1:30 Eastern time. So I guess another hour later for you on Friday afternoon. He's going to speak to us and then do a session in the Wisdom Path this coming Friday. So you'll see it in the schedule if you look for it.
Yeah, so Brazil then, Raquel, Brazil is the same as our Central Standard Time then, I guess.
No, Brazil is in Atlantic time, right? It's later there.
Yeah, it's later.
Yeah.
At least 1 hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it went the other way.
10:15 your time now, Raquel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So this gets wilder and woollier now. So now we're going into the Queen and King level of the wands, but I'm doing it in the Dark Goddess Tarot only to emphasize this. And I think probably Colleen, in terms of the feminine principle, would concur that these are ideas that a woman has put together that many women do need in the sense that you're talking about, Raquel, where you're raised in a patriarchal culture. And so if you read this book, you go, okay, this is different, right? All right, so I'm going to share what's the Queen of Wands in this deck. And so moving on, it is the Witch of Fire, Ceridwen, Welsh goddess of transformation, craft anew from the bones of the old. Okay, that's the goddess that's involved. Okay, so here it goes. Ceridwen, pronounced Ceridwen, is the goddess of wisdom, magic, and transformation for the people of the Western Mountains of the Misty Isle, who call themselves the Cymry people. Welsh, word meaning foreigner, is the name given them by their British neighbors. Ceridwen is the keeper of the cauldron of the underworld, the cauldron of knowledge, of inspiration, and of regeneration. Her cauldron is the vessel where magic is made, where raw power is held, contained, directed, formed, and used to step from one state of being into another. She is a shapeshifter and a walker between worlds. She often appears in the form of a white sow. The sow is fecund and fearsome. Sows are intelligent, have large litters of fast-growing piglets, and will eat their young during terrible times. So if please, whoever isn't muted, please mute, because I'm getting my own words back to me here. Okay, so Ceridwen. Okay, so Ceridwen is the mother of life, the crone of death, and the mystery of rebirth. Ceridwen lives in a magical island and gives birth to 2 children of opposing natures, a daughter, Creirwe, who is fair and good, and a son, Afagdu, who is ugly and mean. The mother loves them both. To help her unfortunate son, she brews a potion to make her boy the most inspired, inventive, and wise of men. Since it must brew for a year and a day to reach its full potency, she enlists a young boy named Gwion to help keep the pot stirred. One day she is out collecting more herbs when a few drops of the mixture splash onto the boy's finger, and he pops it into his mouth. Suddenly he understands the languages of birds and beasts. He knows the secrets of the past and can foresee the future. Realizing how angry Ceridwen will be at him for tasting what was not meant for him, he runs away, returning to Returning, Ceridwen gives chase. They transform themselves through a cycle of seasons as they run, a hare and a greyhound, a fish and an otter, a bird and a hawk, finally as a grain of wheat and a hen, in which form she consumes him, then gives birth 9 months later to the great poet Taliesin. So when she appears in a reading, you have rich experience, special knowledge of a unique viewpoint. Claim it, use it, see what you can create given direction, care, and time. Who you can become is worth the effort. Use an established framework, structure, or container to help your creation develop. This keeps your energy focused and supported and protects it from dissipation. In a contentious situation, keep changing tactics until you find the approach that succeeds. Think of the wisdom of animals and their differing, always evolving ways of surviving and thriving in the world. Being whole means using your full power, embracing both the light and the dark, and knowing life and death together are one great mystery, one cycle of time. Okay, so comments on this?
The symbols in the card, the two swirls on the bottom are the same swirls that appear, for example, in the Hierophant on the shield. So that seems to be something that reoccurs along the way in this, in her representation of the fire. And of course, that's the symbol of sacred geometry again. We enjoy very much the salamander going up and turning the other, this the sphinx rising from whatever she's cooking with a bone, mind you.
Right, right.
Oh, and also the bone marrow, which is located inside the bones, is what gives life, is where the life essence is located.
Yeah, the symbol of the bone there, all life and all time equals that bone, because the marrow is the living bone that generates and ossifies into the structure of the bone. So the whole architecture of soft and hard structure and form and substance exists even in just that one symbol. And I love that you called attention to the spiral. There's a spiral of life, but here it's the fire of life that is being represented, I think, symbolically with those two, the pair, if you will, down at the bottom.
Yeah, she calls attention to the bone marrow very clearly. That's what I noticed, because the break right in the middle of the bone.
Mm-hmm. And that's then the magical staff of life, the bones.
Right.
It seems to be full of alchemy.
Absolutely.
Alchemy and the creativity, the alchemy that takes place in creating. And so, going down those spirals, going down to the depths of the magma, the rhizome for the creative juices, and that the cost is worth the promise.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like a magician card also. It has all those qualities.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I like about this particular description, especially in the third paragraph of when Ceridwen appears, is in a contentious situation, keep changing tactics until you find the approach that succeeds. Think of the wisdom of animals and their differing, always evolving ways of surviving and thriving in the world. And I have a woodblock print that actually is right above me. I can look at it over the top of my computer, and I'm going to show it to you right now because it's exactly on this point, and I always want it around so I understand this point that she's making here. And this woodblock print is called Wasorera Reitomon, which means the forgotten gate. And so if somebody is hearing me out loud in your house, please mute your mic so that you don't pick up feedback. Okay, so this is Wasore Tamon, Forgotten Gate. This is actually the gate of a temple, but it got replaced. And so instead of destroying it, the monks put it back behind a temple in Japan. So it was forgotten once. And when they did that, they covered it with plastic, which is the blue up here. This is plastic covering to protect the roof, except that is all destroyed now. So this is actually the twice forgotten gate. And this is my symbol of remembering to go into a marketing situation in a different way from everybody else. Okay, and this is what Ellen has done with her deck, the Dark Goddess Tarot. She hasn't followed everybody else in making a tarot that's exactly like everybody else. She's taken an entirely different approach. And as a result, she's gone through a gate that was invisible, but only she could see. And she succeeded with it. And so this forgotten gate here is the gate into the other world, or the other approach that you can take. And so, for example, when I started selling medical transcription from India in American hospitals, the Anglo-Saxon women who were running medical records departments laughed at me. And so if I went into them directly, they wouldn't purchase my service, which ultimately became the largest in the world. And the reason it did was the forgotten gate was that they're now 55, or then about 15 years ago, there were 55,000 Indian doctors in the United States, and they've been living and improving their career for decades all over the United States, everywhere. And so I simply went in through them. I didn't go in through the white Anglo-Saxon women who wouldn't even consider medical transcription done in India. And the result is that I ultimately ended up taking that company public. So I really like this piece of advice from Ellen about in a contentious situation, keep changing tactics. You have to look for the forgotten gate. And so, as I say, I have this painting right in front of me, or it's a woodblock print, and I've had it for most of 40 years, because it has exactly that lesson in it. So I love that lesson.
Well, that lesson is so resonant with Colleen's statement, I think, in the Mark of Self last week, where, life is what passes you by while you're too busy making plans. So it's like you turn around and go, well, why don't you let the plans just occur as you're living? And so there's that on the fly dynamism of, martial arts fight or gymnastics, but of a process where, for example, getting off of a mountain when you've almost died. You can't whine, moan, and bitch. You're on the mountain until you're not. And so you keep working different scenarios until you're back down at base camp and can collapse. But I love that forgotten gate aspect of how to go in through that, where it's a whole different process.
Yeah,
it also points. It points to another portal also, which is not so obvious, but she mentions it, that the sow can eat a young if need be.
Sure.
Which symbolically means that a person, one may start something, and at some point they need to it can be recognized that is not going to flower. So they have to move in a different direction or a different path. And that is very wrathful, because once one has engaged in something up to even up to a higher, and to have the courage to leave it.
Right.
And you don't know what may happen, but have the courage to put it down and say,
Yeah.
I
And
can only take it to here.
And the gardener rototills the things under,
Right.
you know, and
Mhm.
they become fertilizer and compost and nourishment for the remaining life to keep the intensity there.
Right.
So
And
I think it's very rich, the female, all the facets of the female in what she observes. It's very rich, and it's hardly found in most decks.
right. And
Experiences that are uniquely female.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Colleen, say
I
it
think
again.
it speaks to experiences that are uniquely female.
Mhm.
You could take this to
Yeah, I mean, or feminine. I can speak to a specific experience in my own life. I have a man that I've worked with. He's now 82 years old, but I've been working with him since 1990. And at one point, I mean, when I first started to work with him, he was already in his early 50s, and he didn't understand computers at all. And I had to make him go take a basic computer course at the community college 4 times before he finally grokked it. Okay, but he became the treasurer of my company, and he had sold municipal bonds in his early career. So he went to the University of Virginia. So he has this beautiful Southern gentleman accent. And every time I would get in trouble financially in my company, I would turn the creditors over to him, and he would soothe the ground, keep everything calm, and oh, don't worry, everything will be fine, right? But there came a time when he refused to do something, and this was about 3 o'clock one afternoon, and we had an investor who was my boss, and he refused to do X, whatever it was. I'm not going to reveal that. But in any case, I had to turn to him and say, well, you're either going to do this by 6 p.m. today, or you're going to be finding another job. Okay. And sure enough, he did what I asked him by 6 p.m. that day. Okay. Now, I think that's the only time I ever gave him a direct order. But the upshot of that story is we took that company public in 2005, and today he was sitting next to me in this room, and we were working on our new project. And he's still the treasurer of the company, and we're just dear friends, and we've been friends for a very long time. And there was only that one occasion, but there's one occasion when, you know, whoever's mama or the boss and might have to eat her children, you know, that was the time when, if he hadn't relented, I would have had to move on without him. And that occurred, oh gee, about 1995 or 96, I think. And so, as I say, he's still sitting next to me for the whole day today, basically. So that's
that's certainly
Tammy.
the male version of the story. Because the female would be that she brings something up from the ground, and it gets to a point where it knows that it cannot fruit, it will not blossom, so it puts it away. So you gave the male version from the top down. The order came, and and up to low, and then this is what must
But
be
I
done.
would have eaten my children. You know, it's the reference to the eating the children.
I follow.
Right?
I do follow that. I resonate, though, Colleen, that there are those things that are directly feminine experience that, as a male, regardless of I have a man womb and all that with my creativity, I will never be able to experience. And that's a powerful identity piece that, like, as we go around, you know, discussing Lilith, you know, in a world that attempts to make everyone Eves, be a Lilith. you know. But so Tammy had her hand up though.
What's up, Tammy?
Yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
Recently, I adopted, this is personal, having just lived that and having something as comforting as what Gilda came up with. I lost one of my pets to a coyote in our neighborhood, and I went to the pound and I adopted a very elderly cat. And it just wasn't, oh, I loved her. I loved her. But she peed everywhere. She was incontinent. She destroyed so much. And it was so loving. And my intent was for her to live out the rest of her life, not in a cage, but with love. And I ended up having to put her down because there was no solution to the problem. And all I have is that I loved her till the bitter end. But as the mother in that situation, it was my, this is, okay, but that's it. And Gilda, you saying that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
sharing that.
Okay, now, as you are.
Now she gave the direct order. She just upstaged you, Skip, as you were. That was priceless, Tammy.
We all have come at these situations from different perspectives, of course. And, you know, from my perspective, I'm looking at it from the feminine side. I don't deny, Gilda, that, you know, part of my Marine came into play in that particular incident. But from the feminine side, in that situation, I was eating my children. Okay. And I knew it. And, you know, we were eyeball to eyeball, and you know, he knew I was serious, and that if he didn't relent, he would be doing something else. And this is after that gentleman had invested a quarter of his net worth in my company. Okay, so I was still prepared to remove him from the company. And, you know, so it is eating
because of a higher order, right? Because of a higher order, it wasn't your own volition, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I guess it was something that our other investor had wanted. That's right, and he was the majority investor.
That's a difference. It's
right.
Not your heart saying, I need to, you know, eat my children. It is coming from another direction.
Yeah, Lisa said it, I think, in the chat really aptly, is you pulled rank.
Yeah, sure. I pulled rank, no doubt about that. And I agree with that. But that pulling rank is only a tool. And, you know, it's
almost like you are the intermediary.
Yeah, I was the intermediary. That's right.
Not the. Yeah, of course, without the intermediary, there is no connection. But there's.
But the perspectives were different between our major investor and me. Okay, for our major investor, it's just a decision. I want this now.
Exactly.
For me, I was like the mother, the queen of the family, because I run a company like a family. I don't run a company like the big boss Maha. I run it like a family. And so for me, it was very painful for me to have to say this to this gentleman who's also 8 years my senior. And so and who had made this huge investment in my company. So it's like the mother of the mother of a family who's told by the masculine side of the family, you have to cut this out because we can't afford it, type thing, you know. And the mother going, oh God, I'm going to have to rip out my hair instead of getting my hair done type thing, right?
Yes,
And
it's a complex. It has both the male and the female there. You're caught in the middle of the male and of the feminine, the masculine, coming from here and then having
Yeah.
to eat your children.
so it's both the feminine and the masculine side of me recognized that it had to be done. Okay.
Mm.
And the feminine and the masculine side of my partner also recognized that it had to be done. Okay. And so, I mean, with the exception of that 3 hours when he was angry with me, other than that, we've been the closest friends for 30 years. And so,
And so it was the best decision. Is that what your
Pardon?
experience? Your experience was that was the best decision, or
Oh,
it was
was
just
it-
a decision that you made because you had to.
it was a
Those-
decision that I had to make, that I had to make, right? And so from the feminine side of me, it was extremely painful to make it. But that feminine side of me also understood that was what I had to do also to keep the family together. In other words, to keep that investor happy, right?
Lisa, even in the chat, just said the company was the baby,
Right.
and your friend. There's the heartfelt struggle. There is your friend,
Yeah.
business colleague, is then in the firing line of saving the home, the company.
Right. And so that's right. And so it's like a general in a battle that sometimes you have to lose men, and that's quite painful. But if you're gonna win a battle, you have to have those sacrifices occur.
Mm-hmm. Colleen, I mean, would you speak though to your comment? I appreciate that, Skip, very much. I mean, Colleen, could you speak to your comment that there are those true experiences that only women can have that we can't? That's really intriguing, because it resonates with me and it really lands, but I don't think I could speak to it at all because I couldn't have the experience. I mean, could you speak to that some?
Well, we have a different body that's experiencing these things. But I think listening to Gilda and listening, I'll stand outside this for a moment, listening to Gilda and listening to Skip, I hear the masculine and feminine trying to understand, trying to be understood by each other. Yeah. And that from a masculine point of view, which from a woman's point of view, what Skip was experiencing, I think it was a good call when Lisa said, it was a power play. You had the power.
Yeah, that was the tool that I had to exercise, but it wasn't because I wanted to. Okay.
Yeah, and those are all masculine terms, a tool that I had to exercise. Well, that's all masculine terms to the feminine mind. But because you have talked about it and you have shared the feelings that you had about it, beginning to see that this was as painful for you because you're masculine and that's the world you have to live in, as it is for women because we're feminine and this is the world that we have to live in. And that birthing, that mother instinct, that having to put an animal down, those things are very, very difficult for women because of that whole birthing thing. And so I'm listening to the two of you wanting to be understood and thinking, how long is it going to take for us, as men and women, to realize each other's differences and yet the same level of pain?
Right. And the reason I'm emphasizing this book is because it expresses it as well as I've ever seen it expressed.
Yeah.
Okay. And from a Jungian psychology point of view, I definitely want the audience to hear this conversation, right? And see what the issues are. I mean, it's all well and good to be a Marine, but you know, the Marine Corps is a pretty blunt instrument, right? The Marine Corps is a weapon that belongs to the President of the United States. And so if you're going to behave like that through your life after you retire, you know, people finish their military careers at 40 or 45, and then you've got another 45 or 50 years to live with your wife. You better learn another method of interacting with the feminine, right?
Another gate. Build another gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so the reason I'm attracted to this after, you know, 3 decades of studying Jung is that it expresses the reality, okay, in so many different ways, so many different facets of the feminine, so that younger men who may see this video will see that these are complex issues, and that maybe getting a copy of The Dark Goddess Tarot would be a good idea, even if you don't want to be a tarot reader. Just reading these 78 discussions are going to make you a better person. Okay. That's my thought anyway. That's why I'm emphasizing this tonight.
And don't forget the young ladies who also have missed a lot of it. Like Raquel has mentioned.
Yep, no doubt. Correct. Absolutely. Okay, so there's one more. And let me, other comments here? No. Okay. No.
Just that the book is obviously raising some things that we as women are responding to. That's for sure. And the men respond to it also. And
right.
So
well, and that's all great. Okay, so now we're going to do the King of Wands.
I wanted to mention the name of the child that was birthed was Taliesin, and how Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright, what?
Used that name as it was his center where he.
Taliesin West and Taliesin East.
Yeah.
His studio. Yeah, that's the name of his atelier. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're up to what is the King of Wands. And this is maybe the most interesting counterpoint to the Rider-Waite King of Wands that I've ever seen. Okay, so she's got the Hag of Fire, the Votum Queen of the Cemetery, Dance with Your Ancestors, Raise the Dead. And notice this image she has a fire on the end of her finger here. Okay, and obviously her hair is bright red, and the rooster has quite red, the same color of red in his whatever you call that, his face, and what is that? I don't know what you call it, but anyway. All right.
Which piece? I'm sorry.
The rooster. What is that that's on his head? The red on top of the rooster's head.
Oh, I don't know the actual technical name for that.
Coxcomb.
What's it called?
Coxcomb.
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 Okay, Coxcomb. Thank you. Okay. So
the rooster is the announcer of the dawn.
Okay, so Dance with the Ancestors, Raise the Dead. Mammon, Bridget is the voodoo or voodoo queen of the cemetery. Mistress of the Gedi, the Iwa or spirit of the underworld. She is married to Baron Samdi, the chief of these spirits. She is foul-mouthed, sarcastic, and suggestive. Her favorite drink is rum laced with hot pepper. Her favorite sacrifice is a gleaming black cockerel. She loves to dance, she loves to shock, and she passionately loves her children. Maman Brigit has the power to raise the dead. She aids and cures lost cases and causes. Those on the brink of losing the flame of their lives through evil magic and bad luck. In one song to Maman Brigit, her people exhort her to arise. To a lot of talk won't raise the dead. Tie up your head and get along with the punishment of the evildoers. The grave of the first woman buried in any cemetery is sacred to this goddess, who is the mother of the ancestors and therefore the source of life and death. Her ceremonial cross can be erected at this grave and offerings to Maman Brigit left there. The consecrated grave provides a pathway for energies to cross from one world to another, for wisdom to be received from the ancestors with love and hope offered to them. On November 2nd, Fetgede, All Souls Day, her people dress in white or in the Geddes purple and black and visit the graveyards. They burn candles, make offerings, and pray to their Maman for protection, justice, and healing. Offerings include rum and cigarettes, peanuts and plantains, coffee and cornmeal. The ancestors must be fed if one would have their blessing. Cornmeal is used to outline her veva, the sacred symbol of that draws and nourishes her. So it may be blown or swept away. Nothing should remain once the prayer is complete and one has put the problem into Maman Brigit's hands. Okay, when you get this card, honor the ancestors there, both your past and your future, where you came from and where you are going. Respect the ancestors who created not only you, but everything around you. Honor them through offerings on the altar, at the cemetery, or in person through a visit to family or the elderly. Do something a grandmother or a beloved elder liked to do. Remember what they taught you. Pass their wisdom along to someone else so it continues to be alive. Visit a cemetery and look for the oldest stones. Be respectful, do not chatter. Never walk across a grave, but walk softly at its foot. Listen to the spirits. Do what they ask if it is within your power. If you would make a change in your world, if you ask for healing or justice, remember to tie up your kidneys, gird your loins, as another might say, and get on with doing all you can on your own behalf. The ancestors and their mammon join in when they see you are serious. So that's hugely Jungian, of course, but comments on this?
She's my favorite.
Tammy, say it again.
Yeah.
This is your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that there's an interesting paradox because the feminine and the family lineage passes on the first 7 years of the child, imprints them with their lineage. So part of it is to honor that, is to at least allow that to blend with who your soul is really is, besides how you have been imprinted with the lineage where you have been born, so that you can dance with it instead of if it doesn't match you or so on, to go against it, because then you're going against patterns that have been ingrained in you since the beginning, and that would be cost a lot of catastrophe. So to dance with them and honor them, and it's like allows flow to and allows you to move in a much better path, along a much better path, because you don't have to battle with And in the meantime, you may also receive some blessings, things that they would have loved or they've known, and from the other side. So.
Right. Well,
Gilda,
go ahead.
Gilda, when you said to dance with, your ancestors and be in flow, I felt, I suddenly just felt like, well, that's so much more fun than trying to, do everything by yourself. Even if it, there's something about it. Yes, it's serious, but there's also this, like, there's a celebration with it. And that feels really good to me, even if it's like serious work.
It smooths the path instead
Yeah.
of going against it. I've had plenty of that in my life, having to
Yeah.
go against it. And in reality, it has to do also with the circumstances. But if the inner being understands that, then regardless of the circumstances, it will choose to dance with it, and in order to advance. And that is, of course, a much better choice. Yeah. Because you can like you can dodge it. You can, instead of like Tai Chi, instead of I'm going to kill, this is not for me, and whatever it is, going to kill it or chop it off. So like Tai Chi, you move with it.
Draw it in.
Mhm. And then, yes.
Like inviting the ancestors in, and I'm just realizing for the first time, my grandmother was a mortician. And I need to think more about what that must have been for her in regard to dealing with the dead.
Right.
Wow.
And my first interaction with that aspect of the feminine, I remember it very clearly. I was 7 years and 3 months old. It was in January of 1954. And my mother had gone, we were living in Michigan at the time, and my mother had gone by train back to Philadelphia to be present at the death of my grandmother. And when she came back, she told this story about how her mother was dying upstairs in her bed, and the rest of the family was downstairs around the table and trying to think of what to do, I guess, at that point. And my mother went upstairs. She told me the story. She had gone upstairs and told her mother that it was okay for her to die. Okay, that we, the family, would be fine if she died. And she did. And I remember very clearly, reacting to that, saying, you permitted your mother, my grandmother to die, and pardon?
At that age, that's rather hard to understand.
Right, and precisely, and yet my mother also kept the life of her mother alive and in my memory. And when she herself was on her deathbed in 2009, we spent two weeks together in the hospital. I literally moved into the hospital room where she was for 2 weeks. And that was the sweetest time of my life with my mother, for one thing, but it was also, yeah, whoever has got their mic unmuted, please mute it, because we get feedback when you don't. But what I was saying was that It was the sweetest time that I ever had with my mother. It was 2 weeks during which we told lots of family stories and lies back and forth, but she told me 2 secrets that she had never told anybody. And that was amazing. And one of the secrets was that she had voted for JFK in 1960, contrary to what I thought that they were going to do, my father and mother. And she sort of joked about it when she came home from the polling place and said she'd canceled out my father's vote. But anyway, she voted for JFK. That was one secret that she'd never told anybody. The other one was that my 2 grandmothers had 5 abortions between them. Now, these were extremely Victorian ladies, and this was in the 1920s. Both of them had 3 living children that lived to adulthood and had children of their own. And yet these 2 Victorian ladies who were faced with the fact that they didn't have proper birth control and so on, ended up between the 2 of them. I don't know which one is which, but they had 5 abortions between them. And this was them committing a felony and having the doctors committing a felony. And so, this relates to my position that although I would never want my daughters to have an abortion on the one hand, on the other hand, sometimes it makes sense. And we brutalize society if we make it illegal. And that's my position. Sticking to it. But anyway.
Well, yeah, that brings up the whole idea that I think there should be just as many laws on the books about women's bodies as there are men's, and that number is exactly 0.
Right. So anyway, so I think that's what's important in the imagery of this card is the flame that's here, and albeit it's a flickering one, it's still important, and I've just immortalized those 2 stories with all of you, and so they're still alive. They're still flickering, even though my mother's been dead for 12 years and my aunt since January of 1954. I mean, my grandmother has been dead since January of 54, but the story lives on here with you and with the other people that may see this video. So.
Well, and Skip, your story there, I think, speaks to the flame on the fingertip, the fire that requires no wood. It's life, it's love, it's friendship, and then there's almost this contemplative aspect of, she's going to raise the dead. They are behind her. She's sitting on a tombstone, and then the rooster, the one, the announcer of the dawn, or the emancipator of the day from the night, is that raise the dead, that she has that power right there.
Right. So Colleen, in terms of the rising feminine, you see that rising feminine right in my presentation tonight on this tarot deck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's manifest here in this 2 hours that we've spent together. And I haven't gotten into the Queen and King of the other decks that we were going to do, so we'll probably do those next week. I don't see that there's any reason to expedite here or to go on till midnight.
Yeah, that one night, 5 hours later.
Right.
There was a curious symbol on that card on the bottom.
Yes.
That I wonder. I could identify some of it related to the runes, but other than that, I have no clue. Does anyone know?
Okay, let me share it again. So here it is.
See, there's a very clear symbol right there on the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, the bottom
sigil.
left. And it's
sigil.
also, what do you call it?
Sigil.
Sigil.
Yeah, I think it's a
SIJ.
voodoo symbol. That's why it's
Mm.
so strange in a way, but that is hoodoo.
Oh,
Hoodoo or voodoo, you know.
it could be also the runes actually. But
Well, hoodoo is root word. Voodoo is more towards the evil aspect. But
Actually, no. Voodoo is a Haitian tradition of the hoodoo. It's nothing to do with evil. It became because of like the way it was appropriate in the
okay.
United States and how Black communities created hoodoo in the United States. But
That makes more
voodoo
sense.
is not an actual evil side of hoodoo. It's different. It's two different religions, I
Okay.
think. But voodoo is Haitian and hoodoo is American.
I'm
Well, and
I'm glad you're here to keep us honest.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Because I'm kind of, my definition was more from New Orleans, and that's inaccurate.
Yeah.
I'm like at
Yeah.
the, you know, the
Voodoo.
tip of the spear, and that stuff dulls. So, thank you. I mean, Holly brought up a great point in the chat, and she may not have been here before. The Ithyphalus picture that had the male with the erection of one of the two husbands of the goddess, but that the tombstones look like lingams, which is the sacred penis, the sacred phallus, and that the flame then reminds her of Shiva. So that's an interesting, I think, draw into here, especially pulling the Shiva aspect. I mean, Holly, could you speak to that?
Well, yeah. I that's the first thing I saw when I looked at the background. I was like, well, those look like lingams. They also look vaginal, which I think lingams can be both. Although they you know, you normally think of them as phallic, they also contain this groove, which is interesting. And then Shiva, Shiva's the god of like the flame. He dances with the flame, and I just thought that it just made me feel like there's this, you know, symbolism of so much life and death. I mean, this is like this like celebration of ancestors. Yes, they talked about ancestors who are still alive, but also to remember the ancestors who have passed, and there's so much richness in that. But a flame, all you need is one little flame to like start a large, you can start a large fire with it. You know, it doesn't, you know, all it takes is a spark. And
Right.
this is like the forever flame that's going on. And there's, you know, I'm trying to remember some of the Shiva stories, but there's there definitely is something with, at some point, like a snake kind of coming up from the ground. And it's funny because I pay more attention to the goddess stories now. I mean, the Shiva story for me was like 25 years ago or so, but you know, I spent time on an ashram, and that totally reminds me of that.
it's almost like she's holding a match, because all of the
Yeah.
tombs, the lingams have the same shape, but it's not
Yep.
just the outline. And she's got the flame, the full red in it, like she can ignite.
Yes, she's
All
the
of those.
animator.
Exactly.
Yeah, the animator.
The lingams are just stone,
Right.
but
So-
without her animating them, that's what they are. Yeah, the fire is the animation of it all, and that is like that feminine energy.
So she's, yeah, that's really good with Shiva. She's the carrier of the spark of light herself. And then even with the lingams, I mean, if I look at it not from the object, but from the contrast, the space around the lingam is then very feminine, very vaginal, yoni.
And from what I can see, that little line on the bottom of them all also makes me. But I think lingams are like that, which is, you know, they're supposed to encompass. They really look like the masculine, but they also encompass the feminine.
Both, right? Almost like an acorn, the whole oak tree inside the acorn.
And of course, it's arguable whether there's a small flame on each of the tombstones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Or wicks that she's
or,
ready to
or
light.
something that can be lit. And so in terms of contrasting this with the King of Wands, you know, somebody was on one of my sessions the other day, and they made a comment, a nasty comment on the chat, which was something like, "Oh, this, you old man, I'm not going to listen to you," type thing, right? And I said, "Fine, bye," and I banned him from the YouTube channel. You know, take your individuation someplace else, but right. But
Yeah,
but the point is that the, you know, the king, or the you know, what this card represents too, the you know, Hecate, or the wise woman, right? Wise woman or Hecate, or the king, you know, they may be close to death, but you know, they have something to say, and maybe there's a piece of wisdom in this flame here. So,
well, yeah, and that comment on that nasty comment on YouTube, that sounds like, you know, the male who hasn't left adolescence at 28 even, and still probably snickers like a 12-year-old at a sex joke. I mean, there's no life affirming spirituality in that. So nice use of the ban button. So
go ahead, Colleen.
Colleen.
Let's hear what Colleen is.
There is a line in this yoni that she's sitting on. There is a groove.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, there is. To me, it looked like an edge image of the tombstone, but you're right. It's a double line, isn't it? It's a groove.
It depends on who's looking at it.
Yeah.
Skip, I want to thank you for opening this up. I mean, you've opened up so much for men and women by doing the Jung stories anyway, but to dive into this one was a big dive, and you're doing it. And I really have to thank you for
Yeah.
the stage and rolling up your sleeves and going for this. Thank you. Thanks so much.
I'm very pleased that very pleased that you're pleased. That's for sure.
I love meeting the women that I'm meeting this way, you know, with Gilda and Tammy, and it's nice to meet you now, Holly, and to see you,
Right.
Raquel and Annabelle, all of you. That's very special too.
Yes, it is. I've been enjoying all the community, the camaraderie, and I learned so much.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
why I'm doing it. And I thank you, Holly, and you know, very experienced readers like Jordan and Raquel, and others, Gilda, for having shared with us your experience as we've gone forward. And I pretty much have decided that, you know, I was thinking, okay, when's the end of our when is the end of the tarot sessions that we've been doing for the last 6 months? And I really have come to the point where I don't think they can end, in some sense. I mean, I'm not sure that I'm going to be the master of ceremonies forever, but I think that what we get out of these different perspectives on the cards is that are really key psychological factors in life. Okay, and having these conversations, I'm sure, help people. I've had many comments, either privately or on the YouTube chat or wherever, from people who say, wow, this is really interesting and really useful. You know, so that's why I do it. And, you know, I'm always trying to emphasize that we don't do this for financial benefit whatsoever. You know, although we do take some contribution sometimes, but we really, I'm definitely making bigger contributions than I get into the process here. And so anyway, I just want to emphasize to everybody on YouTube, I'm putting the registration link here. And so if you want to be notified of any of our sessions, including the session that is related to John Destian, who began his book with "Marriage Doesn't Exist," and you want to learn what's in the rest of his book, then go to that link, which is on the YouTube chat, and I'll put it here on the Zoom chat. I think most of you know where it is and have already registered, but we do these sessions for free, and they're open to anybody who will be respectful. Okay, the only reason we have a passcode and that sort of thing is because there were some really unindividuated young people, particularly young men, a year ago who were doing these Zoom bombs, and we try to avoid those. But otherwise, anybody that is a responsible individual is certainly welcome to be part of the panels. And
also Skip on Sundays we're doing The Unseen Partner by Diane Croft, who's gonna, Skip has her for two different sessions. I believe one on the 11th of April, one on the 25th. Right. Is that? And it's Love and Longing in the Unconscious by Diane Croft, and it's such a poetically put together, beautiful book. But The Unseen Partner is
right. And the other book we're reading in tandem, Jordan has helped me with this, is The Mystical Path Less Traveled by Jerry Wright. And they sort of represent the logos, the eros, which is Diane's side, and the logos, which is Jerry's side. But that isn't to say that Jerry's book is one-sided. It only reflects the fact that Jerry won't let me read his poetry. and
he wants to do it himself, right?
Yeah, he wants to do it himself. So Jerry, the Mystical Path Less Traveled is going to be presented by Jerry Wright in person on the 18th of April. And both of these are at 2 p.m. on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I'm sure they're going to be very, very powerful. I've had several very meaningful conversations with Diane Croft personally, and I can vouch for the fact. And her presentations are not about the book. As a matter of fact, they're about experiences of God in the individuation process. That is what she's going to talk about. So it's not explicitly the topic of the book, which is more about the process of individuation and how you actually experience it. But I hope others on YouTube, we've had a fairly sizable audience this evening, and I hope people who've seen this anew will register and join us on those Sundays. And for those of you who don't know, we are having a birthday party on April Fool's Day, believe it or not, for Khushbu Kantaria. Khushbu is the woman who read the Bhagavad Gita with me on this channel, and she read it in Sanskrit, and I read it in 3 different English versions. So before we began, I had never read the Bhagavad Gita all the way through, and now I can prove that I've read it three times, because I read it 3 times during that process. I read 3 different English translations of the Bhagavad Gita, and you can find that playlist on this YouTube channel. But anyway, Khushbu is going to, her birthday is the 2nd of April, And so we're going to celebrate it at 7:30 a.m. her time in Bangalore on her birthday. So that means it's 10 p.m. Here. So if you're on the East Coast and you want to participate, you have to be willing to stay up late. But if you're on the West Coast, you're in luck because it'll be in the reasonable evening hours. For Raquel, it might be a little late because we're going to start at 11 p.m. Raquel's time. But if you're Lisa or Holly or some of the others, it might be feasible to listen. And so that's on the first. Of course, we have our advanced reading group every week on Wednesday at 1 p.m.
Eastern, right?
Eastern time. And on the second, we have John Destian on the relationship. Marriage doesn't exist, quote unquote. And Colleen and I are cooking up 4 more art sessions, which will be trying to connect with the collective unconscious. And those will be on the 13th and 27th of April and the 2nd and 4th Thursday of May. I'm sorry, 2nd and 4th Tuesday of May. These are held at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. California time.
And that Wednesday, 1 p.m., currently doing The Lament of the Dead, which is psychology after Jung's Red Book. Wednesdays at 1 Eastern.
Right. So it's a full plate. And meanwhile, I'm trying to found the International Pandemic Preparedness Center with some very capable techies in Kuala Lumpur. And we have about 40 people working on it. And I'll be announcing more about what we're doing soon, but it'll be something that once it comes to your neighborhood, you'll want to know about it, because it'll be a way to know where in your community are different diseases, whether it be tuberculosis or sexually transmitted diseases, or COVID is another one, of course. But it's a very interesting project, and it keeps me working through the day and late at night at the moment. It keeps me honest. Anyway, anything else? Last chance, Raquel. No.
I just want to say thank you for bringing up the Dark Goddess Tarot. I think this is
absolutely.
this was not a side trip. This was just a bigger highway.
And we're wondering if you know anything about the remade deck. Is it?
What is the deck?
Well, that one is no longer available.
Which deck?
And the one you showed of the Dark Goddess.
Oh, it is available.
It's available on Amazon.
I just bought it in Barnes and Noble.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is.
I walked
it is
into
a
Barnes.
revamped.
Yeah, it's revamped. I mean, retooled.
And it
It's
still has
like a
that
second
same. It still has that same front that he showed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I thought I saw a different online. I saw a different covering, so I get confused. You know, when they do read this and read
Well,
that.
I don't know whether I'm looking at the revamped or the original, but whichever it is.
Oh, okay, so you
It's
just
From
brilliant.
2020.
okay. So
It was
that-
released
Thank you.
in October.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
2020.
Right. It's
Yeah, and-
copyright 2020.
Yeah, the revamp also could be just another way to say second edition. I don't know that she changed much substantially,
Right.
and she may actually. Now that I think about it, I should go back and see. She probably subtly retooled some cards so that if you know what to look for, like a rare coin or something, that you go, oh no, that's from this version. So just
Well,
also to isolate it out, and then that respects the original
The
and
Mythic
makes the
Tarot,
new one.
but like, for example, in Mythic Tarot, which Raquel is very, I don't know if she uses the new version of the old version. I used the old version forever, and the cards are really falling apart. They did not stay together. The colors moving. I mean, and I always wrap them in the black. So I would not mind having a new deck that looks the same in order to continue using it.
Yeah, I'm only using the new version of it, which is here.
Okay.
And it's called the New Mythic Tarot.
And it's changed. Actually, the reason why I bought it to begin with was because of all the blue skies. There were blue skies everywhere. That reminded me of the ocean, of open air. And now there's no blue. There's not that many blue skies. Now they've changed the chariot. The blue skies are not necessarily so sumptuous and so on.
Gilda, if you don't like it, I think you have to do your own.
No, Gilda, it's all the carbon emissions that are getting into the tarot decks.
No, but
the skies aren't that blue anymore.
Yeah,
it's hyper realism.
That might be. I do study the artists, what they do and how they revamp things. And sometimes I really like touch tone tarot is wonderful. She uses cat black, uses the paintings of famous people and portraits. And so then you connect with that being and so on. And then how can you put liberty leading the people, which is and then cut her arm off, and in some things you cut the finger off of instead to make it smaller, and yet put the whole figure there makes a lot more sense. Yeah. But they cut things off and so on, and you're supposed to look at this figure and talk to it when it's got minus an arm, and they chop up things because they put it in the computer. It's like weird.
It's called digital shamanic dismemberment. So
I prefer when the artists themselves draw it, because they have this creation. I don't mind if Touchstone chooses that, but at least put a full scene with a full figure, or and when there's a portrait, but when you cut off the things that are in the portrait, you're cutting off the identity of that portrait that the artist used once upon a time to point out who this person is.
Well, that's why it's nice to have good books with tarot decks, right?
Full pictures.
I'm not a fan of that, and I really like that deck. But when I started seeing borders and then cut fingers and all of these things, liberty leading the people with her arm cut right here. I mean, what female are you going to identify with that?
Well, the tarot readers need to listen to need to know when not to listen to the editor. I mean, my original self-published deck had all nudity, and then we wanted to kidify it, so I closed them. Every single parent said that was just to get past the custom of the parents. Kids don't care about that, so and the adults are the ones bothered by the nudity. So, so you can make a bad decision when you revamp, so to speak.
Yeah, because you're embodying these images are not just, you're not just having a beer and chatting over something. These are things that play in your unconscious. So are you going to put an image there that's chopped off? This is crazy, just to have a close-up for you to see the face. That doesn't make any sense to me.
So, Gilda, I didn't get at the beginning of what you were saying. What deck are you saying has been chopped up?
Touchstone Tarot.
Oh, Touchstone
by Cat Black. Yeah.
The Touchstone Tarot, not her Golden Tarot.
No, hopefully not. I ordered the Golden Tarot and I looked at it, and it had, when you have long shots, medium shots, or close-ups, it's fine. And it has the Touchstone has a lot of portraits of famous people, aramals that you may find in the National Gallery in London. All these amazing portraits, which would be so beautiful to have a tarot deck that you actually have the figure there with all the things that you can. She goes, because you can communicate with this person. That's really a beautiful thing, and that's a great idea. But then I had an unboxing and looked at things, and then I saw like liver to leading the people and so on, with arms chopped off or the fingers chopped off. And the new deck is even worse. The made edition, the fingers, you know, of the little person below or something are chopped off, or the ear, and so
That's
that doesn't-
one good reason to buy it from Amazon, because if you buy it from Amazon and you unbox it and it has chopped off arms, you can send it back.
No, but
Well,
it has
actually,
chopped
with
up
that deck-
in her creations chopped up. It's not that the card itself came chopped up. It is that she, in her creation, in order to bring all these close-ups, chopped up the figure.
Oh, okay. So they're not like statues that have lost their arms. You're talking that she
Right.
literally enlarged them
I
so
know
that they cropped.
Yeah.
Exactly.
cropped,
That's
okay.
exactly what I'm saying. That,
Okay.
that
So
instead
Holly,
of
what were you saying, Holly?
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, they cut the image, and
Yes.
and it's kind of like reflective of what I think so many people actually experience in their lives, right? Like working in cubicles, or you know, we're always trying to, you know, make something look just right before we present it. Now that we have all these digital squares that we're always dealing with, but then we lose the real meaning of why we're really doing anything. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much detail in cards. Like if you start cutting off, if it's all just about a portrait, unless that's what it is, you know,
right, exactly. If it's the whole
doesn't make
portrait,
we
exactly.
lose the meaning.
When you put liver to leading the people, which is a woman like this, and she's got the whole thing going, then it's okay to use it, but use the full body shape.
Yeah.
So then you get the sense that, oh, you know, this is really the freedom person leader.
Right. It's
But
not
you put
it's not an illusion.
right. So you put the leader. She uses the leader on the card, and in a close up, so you see the face. So it's all about the face.
Yeah.
And her arms are chopped off. And this is liberty leading the people. How is she going to lead the people when she doesn't even have arms? It's really weird.
I have
Good
a
point.
Morgan Greer deck that's a lot like that. My grandkids like to play with it, but you know, the scenery is all focused in on, it's all close-ups, and all the detail of the story isn't there. So
If it's created that way, then I understand. But when it's taken all classical images from portraits and famous artwork and chopping it up without the body itself. I'm not saying that you may take an image from and use it, but you're chopping up the actual figure. And
Right.
and
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's a misplaced use of Georgia O'Keeffe's quote when, you know, interviewed, someone says, "Miss O'Keeffe, why do you paint your flowers so large?" She said, "To force people to look, and maybe they might even see." You know, but when you zone in on a tarot card, you just eliminated 40% of the information, if not more. You know, and that's,
well, in that case, it's something that already exists.
well, right.
And Georgia O'Keeffe is creating something, so she gets to
Right.
choose what she wants to show you. It's
Well, and
very
to Holly's
different.
I just
point
want to
too, you know,
thank. I just
slave
want
to
to
the
thank.
square.
Yeah.
I just want to thank a couple of people here on the YouTube chat who've been very loyal recently, and that includes Justin Case, especially, who's joining us from Denmark, and Jiro Schulte, I think it is. They've had a good conversation here. Patrick Hollywood is here. Tammy is also on the YouTube chat, so that's good. Estelle.
Does it say that I'm there, or was it just when I thanked Patrick for his
it's just when
compliment?
you thanked him, you thanked Patrick.
Okay,
It doesn't say that you're there.
because
per
I'm
se.
literally only in one place.
No,
Even though I feel
just saw your
scattered.
name. I just see your name
Yeah.
there, but I appreciate the fact that they're having this conversation, and I'm sorry we were so into our discussion tonight that we didn't really get the YouTube audience involved in it this evening. So anyway, go ahead. Holly, Gilda's had a chance to say a lot, so and Raquel passed. So Tammy, you have any ending comments?
I don't. I really, really enjoyed tonight.
Good.
I got a lot from tonight to think about for the next week, and I'm ready to go to bed now.
Okay, fine. Annabelle, how about you?
Well, I had the usual very direct kind of synchronicity and coincidences that happens. I mean, it happens every week. And this week, I think the most direct is that yesterday was a full moon. And I meet with a group of 12 women every full moon since 1998. So every single moon, sometimes 13 in a year. And we alternate who's leading. And of course, during Corona time, we've been doing them on Zoom. So last night, I was the leader. And we always have a choice of what to call the moon because there's so many different cultures. So I called it Crow Moon. And of course, we started this evening with the goddess with the crow on her head. And as we moved through each of the 4 goddesses, we touched on everything pretty much that was discussed among the 11 women who met last night from Colorado, Antigua, Massachusetts, upstate New York, you know, like all of us 11 who met. And the ending goddess who we had was my theme, which was, I asked everyone to bring photographs if possible, and certainly stories with dates and so on of their grandmothers. And so, and some of the women are already grandmothers themselves.
Mhm.
So, and one of the women in Antigua was staying with her mother. So her mother spoke about her own mother and her grandmother. And this is a woman who we have met in her home, the mother. We usually don't include anyone else. Anyway, so that's just a little skimming the surface, right, of how much tonight was just, again, you know, they just weave together these tarot roadmap sessions for me. Yeah.
Terrific. I'm delighted to hear that. Holly, we haven't paid enough attention to you. And is this like something that you might want to join again with? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, I think it would be great. Well, first off, thank you for welcoming me on.
Yeah, you're certainly welcome.
Yeah, I think it's always great to talk to people about tarot and beyond. And also, same thing for me. I had some synchronicities that were just like firing off, you know, as we were talking about. I made it for just a few of the cards, but I found it, you know, wonderful. So
Terrific. I'm
I
delighted
don't know
to
how
hear
else.
it.
Yeah, it's great to hear people's stories and just how everyone's relating to the cards, and just the discussion about the feminine. I'm in my band is all women, and we have conversations as well about just being female in the world, and it's become, I feel like, more important to me than I knew in the last year. I'd say I feel like so much of what's happened in the world with the pandemic, there are different ways of dealing with it, and I feel like there's sort of this way when we were talking about, like, you know, eating your baby, eating the babies, and kind of living with the sort of just the cycles of nature. Like sometimes nature deals us a blow, and sometimes you have to soften with it,
Yeah.
and go with it. And I've found that was one of my synchronicities, because recently I was saying, you know, you could I was having a conversation with someone, and I was like, you could have an approach that's, you're going to be shaking your fist at like the whole, at all of 2020, or you can, work with it work with the energy in a different way, because it's the energy that's there, right? Not the energy maybe that you want, but it's the energy that's there, So that was one of the synchronicities that I felt. So yeah, it was.
Do you have a deck that you created?
That I've created? Not yet, but it's on my, I put it on it's one of my goals. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I am a painter, so it's,
I see. Okay. Do you want to share with us or with the YouTube audience your, website type thing?
Oh, sure.
Free advertising.
Thanks. Yeah, you can find me at either cosmicholley.com. So cosmic, HOLLY.com, or Holly, HOLLY -Troy, TROY.com. They'll take you to the same place.
I hate to tell you about a synchronicity, but my first pet was named Holly, Desert Holly. We called her Holly though, but her name was actually Desert Holly.
That's sweet.
She was a full-bred tricolor collie.
That's what I had. That's tricolor
Holly the collie.
Holly the collie. Yeah,
I had a Chihuahua.
Yeah, we've had 3 of them, but
oh my God, that's synchronicity. My first dog here was a tricolor collie. I've had 3 tricolor collies.
Yeah, we've had let's see. Well, we've had 2. We had Holly, and then we had another one that was called Shadow recently.
Oh wow! My first dog when I was a kid was not named Holly, but it was a tricolor collie. And of course, his named Dobie after J. Frank Dobie, because my English professor parents.
And then because
so gracious,
because I was raised in the
very intelligent dogs.
In the Lassie era, I've also had two sable. I've also had 2 sable collies. It's actually the sable males are actually the sweetest.
The loyalty too. I mean, at 3, I was able to walk around the neighborhood by myself, unattended, without her on a leash, because she would follow, and if anybody new came up, out came the teeth. And I remember just looking over, and her face is right here to mine, and I'm looking right inside this, this, vicious predator, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool, because I'm like, she's protecting me. Yeah. So it was like the happiest rage I think I'd ever seen.
So Lisa, did you have any final comment? I'm going to come to our newer visitors later, but Lisa, do you have something?
Thank you for tonight. I'm processing in my own way, and it's been depth provoking. The book is in my cart in Amazon.
Okay.
Yes. So I've got so many books, and I'm considering relocating. Tomorrow I'm looking at a condo. But yeah, I'm just processing. And thank you for tonight.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a while to process some of this stuff. Now, Ebenezer, you're here. You haven't said anything or uncloaked. Do you have anything you want to comment on?
It was really interesting. I've never really looked at tarot cards, so it's a really new experience for me, and I'm gonna look into this book. And a lot of stuff that we talked about today is also related to something I'm trying to uh, do right now, which is change my major and pursue something else that I was pursuing before. So a lot of stuff gave me an insight onto like seeing um, seeing opportunity and stuff that I done before and taking chances for the future. So and I appreciate all the books and every recommendation that you guys made. I hope to see you guys again.
Yep, terrific. Thank
Thanks
you
for being here.
And Blake,
Thank
And
Blake,
is,
does Blake have anything you want to say, Blake? We'll give you a shot here.
Yeah, no worries. It's just always a pleasure. I'm glad I got to make it, you know. Got my new deck in, well, actually, yeah, like last
Right.
week, the Rider Waite. So I just been playing with that.
Yeah. So,
Up a little bit.
yeah. So Ebenezer and Blake, if you're going to get started in Tarot, I suggest you start with the Rider Waite, and that you get a book called 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. Those are good starting points, let's say. And you can, if you want to know something about divination, there's a whole separate playlist on this website where I did a version of Rachel Pollack's divination technique back in 2017, 2018. So that's 18 videos that you can watch that I did back in those days. I wouldn't say it's brilliant, but anyway, we talked about it for 4 weeks, I think, and I chopped it up into 18 separate videos. But in terms of getting a start in what the Tarot and divination with the Tarot is about, that is a good way to get a handle on it. What I'm doing with our group here is trying to show that the Tarot drives us toward depth in psychology, and this is the fundamental idea of Carl Jung, and you know, Jung himself didn't really do much with the Tarot, but he did fully bring out the idea of archetype, and the Tarot does use the archetypes very heavily, so, and the major arcana particularly, and so it's good to get to know it, okay, because you're going to run into it your whole life, and it's a pleasurable way to learn a lot about human psychology, actually. I guess I would say. And so in terms of the Dark Goddess Tarot, as I say, I doubt I will ever do a divination with the Dark Goddess Tarot. I sometimes do put divinations on Twitter just for fun, but they're mostly political divinations for our former president. So,
and not in a positive.
So I'm sure he
not
misses
necessarily
them.
positive. Pardon?
I'm
What'd you
sure
say?
he misses them since he's been banned from Twitter. I'm sure that he's sorry to be.
Have you? So you haven't burned that deck yet?
Not yet. I still have it.
So Holly, there was a piece of history from Skip, so you don't hear this the wrong way, that he was doing readings last year up to the election and after in regards to Trump, but he's like, I could never use this deck with any other person. That's just toxic. I'm going to have to burn it at the end.
Well, I actually love the deck, which is called the Cosmic Tarot. And I actually bought myself a new set of the Cosmic Tarot, which I may use for divination with others, but that particular deck I can't touch again for anybody else.
I was
burn your fingers.
Contemplating that maybe to use that deck, it's like if you were reading with a male person, then you would be accessing that male's anima. And
Not
so
with Trump. It's like that
And-
seed, that
and if it
flower
was-
didn't bloom.
if it was a
Sorry.
female, you would have insight into facets of that she might need to realize that you wouldn't realize otherwise because you're a male reader. So I think it's powerful in those ways.
Well, I think the deck is powerful, and I like
Right.
using it because it's a relatively easy deck to read from. So I was able to put a Celtic Cross reading in a 240 character tweet. But I'm afraid my political bias shows through pretty dramatically.
That just means you have good taste.
Yeah, but
Oh God.
Great.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like Tammy said on the chat earlier, it's like, oh, I love these. I always leave with a longer reading list.
Yeah.
No, I have
we
a-
should, if
Yeah.
we should look at Amazon and see if during this session every week there's a spike on
There's
Amazon
a
sales.
yeah, for tarot decks, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so let us mention once again that this evening we have focused on the Dark Goddess Tarot by Ellen
Lorenzi-Prince.
Lorenzi-Prince,
Right.
Prince, and during
And
this
again,
day-
I reconnected with her this morning, and I'm going to see if we can have her do a presentation directly. She's a wonderful woman, and she's a hoot too. So yeah, she's just a great presence. Really, really interesting person.
Well, I would like her to do it on the Wisdom Path because
Right.
I'd like to use that part of my mailing list for her. I mean, I have 800 people on the mailing list right now, but only 200 of them are signed up for the tarot. And, I would like to have her talk about the work of creating a tarot deck, but, also talk about the psychological aspects of doing a tarot deck. And she obviously at the end of this book does address that, and I think that would be very interesting and useful for our general audience of Jungian psychology, and so that's what I would like to do with her. I mean,
Definitely.
the timing is whatever she likes. I mean, I'll do
Right.
it. I'll do it at any hour of the day or night, as you know, Jordan.
Well, let us know so we won't miss the.
Oh, well, of
Yeah, and
course.
that-
When
and
we
I'll-
schedule it, it'll be on the Wisdom Path schedule.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
we're not going to do it like tomorrow or anything like that.
Right.
but-
And then for anyone who wasn't in the pre-show to Enriquez, I confirmed him this morning. So I met him back 2009.
Right.
But he's a real great character, and he's going to be on to be interviewed and discussion. So Enriquez, date TBD, but we'll
Look
have
up-
him on
look
as well.
Up, tarotology,
Yeah, tarology, right?
on YouTube, tarotology or tarotology.
I think it's just tarotology. I think it's
With
how tarotology is how he
double
pronounces.
L,
No, TAROTO.
double L.
Okay, that's the name of a publisher, right? Tarology? No, that's Tarosophy.
It's Tarosophy Tarot Association with Martin Katz and Tally Goodwin in the UK.
Okay.
So anyway, I have his book, Enriquez's book, tarotology, or whatever it is.
Tarotology should be
Yeah,
tarotology.
here, and
I think it's
so-
just tarotology, and the T goes silent, just like in tarot.
Okay, well, it still is spelled that the way I pronounced it, and so
Then it's
so-
tarology.
yeah, but it
But
might
then
be,
people wouldn't know to put a T there.
yeah. So yeah, you wouldn't know whether it was ology of the tar pits or something,
Right.
right? And so anyway, he's got an interesting couple of videos there on YouTube, and his his bias is that he only reads the Marseille Tarot. And so I want to question him about that. I look forward to questioning him about that. And, but, you know, he wants to have a conversation and we're all good for that. So
Yeah, he's a great guy. And
right. And in his video, to his credit, he has all the famous Tarot people, right?
Yeah.
Including Rachel Pollack and
Mary Greer, and right.
Yeah.
In fact, they were all at the Reader Studio 2009, I think right before when that was being shot in New York the next year. So it was kind of a powwow meeting there. And I laughed that I came in a year late and was like, oh.
Yeah, that was quite a meeting that they had, right? So we'll have to do some of those meetings after we get cleared from COVID. I've had my shots. Anybody else? No. Okay.
Not yet. I'm still waiting on
I've
the
had
alchemy of how the shot's going to affect my plasma. I mean, it's like, is vitamin K going to tear up someone's lungs? I mean, versus, I had it. So I'm waiting to see the research on the effect of someone who already has had it. Now, I know you can get reinfected because all through the summer, I had chills pains. So I think you can be reinfected 24 hours after you don't have it. So I'm just worried about the physical effects of someone who's already got an immunity to a degree to make sure I boost it.
There's no guarantee that you may not even get it. So.
Well, right. And so, so I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but so anyway, I haven't yet. So
yeah.
My mom just
I've got both shots.
Did you?
And I had the virus. And I was very sick about 12 hours after my second shot.
Okay.
Or about 18 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And a few people told me that it was because I had had the virus.
Okay. So when you had the virus, did you feel like you were drowning for like 72 hours? Like you could not eat
about 10 days.
Yeah.
But could you breathe? Could you?
Hard time breathing. Food.
I had to be on my stomach for 3 days to hang my lungs, just to steal a gasp.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So
well,
which
that's
brand
hard.
did you get, Annabelle?
I had Moderna.
Yeah, so did I. And I had no reaction whatsoever to the Moderna.
Many people have no reaction to either shot.
Mm-hmm.
I had no reaction to the first and severe reaction to the second.
Did you guys see the prank YouTube video about the guy who tracked his side effects? And he goes, day 1, no side effects. Day 2, I feel strong and powerful. And he starts to have this Russian accent. And by the 5th day, he's just speaking in Russian.
My mom just had the first vaccine today.
Oh, she did?
And here in Brazil, we're taking Brazilian vaccine. And our president made this meme trying to prevent people from doing the vaccine because he's against it. So he created this meme that said that everyone that had the Brazilian vaccine would turn to a crocodile. So this became a whole thing here in Brazil, that everybody that's getting the vaccine is just posting pictures of crocodiles everywhere. Just
I bet people are having a lot of fun with that. And you just can't wait for that next election, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so Moderna. Okay.
Yeah, we were painfully waiting for our 2020 election for 4 years. So we feel your pain, Raquel.
Yeah, but the prognosis for us is not good. He probably will win re-election. He'll be re-elected. So? Yeah, probably, unfortunately.
Anyway, we feel your pain, even though we got off lightly, I guess, in a sense. Anyway, peace, everyone. I'm going to call this to a halt. Thank you for being here tonight.
Bye, everyone.